Today, we are diving into a miracle story that's so incredible, it's hard to believe it's even true. We're headed to the Big Island of Hawaii, home to Kilauea, one of the most active volcanoes on Earth. Picture a helicopter soaring over molten lava, capturing jaw-dropping footage for a Hollywood blockbuster. It sounds thrilling, doesn't it? Well, what happens next is the stuff of nightmares, but also miracles. In November of 1992, 3 guys, a pilot and 2 cameramen, crashed into an active volcano, but they lived to tell the story. There was Craig Hosking, the daredevil pilot, who was born in 1958. He was from Salt Lake City. Craig's dad, a former Army pilot and aviation entrepreneur, taught him how to fly airplanes when he was 8 years old and helicopters when he was 12. On his 16th birthday, Craig soloed a Cherokee 180 and a Comanche 400 airplane, as well as a Bell Jet Ranger and Bell 47 helicopter. On his 17th birthday, he received his private license in both airplanes and helicopters. On his 18th birthday, he received his commercial license in both. The first half of Craig's career, he worked for his father's company, Hoskins Helicopters. By the age of 25, he had purchased his first Pitts airplane and personally installed landing gear on the top. This gave birth to a new and unconventional air show act, as Craig became the only person to ever take off and land an airplane upside down. Craig moved to Hollywood in 1987 and rapidly became the most sought-after camera and stunt pilot in the movie industry. He worked on over 375 movies, television shows, and commercials, likely more than anyone in history. There was also Michael A. Benson. He was a cinematographer from Woodland Hills, California. He was a seasoned cameraman with credits on films like Terminator 2 and Ghost. Last but not least, we have Chris Duddy. He had a knack for adventure. He was 31 years old and he was an assistant cameraman working alongside Benson. Christopher started his career in 1985 at Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's visual effects studio. Early in his career, he filmed visual effects and action sequences on blockbuster movies such as The Abyss, Total Recall, and Terminator 2. He was on the Academy Award-winning visual effects team on all 3 movies. These guys were hired by Paramount Pictures to shoot the footage for the erotic thriller Sliver. Yep, the one with Sharon Stone. William Baldwin and Tom Berenger were also in the film. The plan was to fly over Kilauea's Pu'uowo vent to capture a dramatic volcano scene for the movie's opening credits. Don't ask me to say that very often. The guys were ready to go out and get their footage. But Pu'uowo isn't just any crater. It's a 772-foot tall cinder cone in Kilauea's East Rift Zone, known for being active as hell. Since 1983, it's been erupting like it's auditioning for a disaster movie, spewing toxic gases and molten lava. But Paramount was like, it's fine, just get the shots from the helicopter. You'll be safe. Don't worry. It was simple, but Madame Pele, the Hawaiian goddess of volcanoes, she had other plans. It was a Saturday, on November 21st of 1992. The trio hopped into a Bell Ranger helicopter and soared over the Big Island's rugged terrain. Kilauea was in a feisty mood, with molten lava bubbling over 275 feet below the crater's rim. The air was thick with sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, gases that could knock you out faster than 2 bottles of wine. But these guys, they were pros. and they were ready to get some jaw-dropping shots. So they're flying over the crater, and Chris tosses a bottle of gin into the volcano as an offering to Madame Pele. She's the true Hawaiian goddess of fire and volcanoes. It was a wonderful gesture, but Madame Pele was clearly not impressed. It was just before noon and the helicopter was buzzing over Kilauea. Out of nowhere, the helicopter's engine crapped out. There was no warning, no distress call, just a sickening drop. Craig, the pilot god, managed to guide the chopper to a crash landing on the crater floor, just 125 feet from a bubbling pool of molten lava. I mean, we're talking red hot 2,000-degree Fahrenheit lava that could turn them into toast. Miraculously, all three walked away with just minor cuts and bruises. Craig's piloting skills deserve an Oscar because that landing was a straight-up miracle. Craig later said it happened so fast he didn't even have time to radio for help. But now they're 150 feet below the crater's rim. They were surrounded by toxic soup of sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and carbon dioxide. Breathing this stuff is like inhaling a chemical weapons test gone wrong. Burning eyes, searing lungs, the whole deal. The crater's walls were steep, unstable, and they were crumbling. It was like trying to climb a sandcastle during a storm. The steam and fog were so thick they could barely see their hands in front of their faces. It was like being trapped in Satan's sauna, with zero visibility, making climbing out a nightmare. Craig, the pilot, managed to get back to the helicopter, fix the radio, and call for help. And Craig's stunt pilot brain was wired for problem solving under pressure. His instincts were to stay near the helicopter. It was about 150 feet below the crater's rim and 125 feet from the lava pool. The floor was relatively flat but surrounded by unstable rock slopes and the deadly lava pit. The area was choked with toxic fumes and steam, making it hard to breathe or see. As for Mike and Chris, they decided to take matters into their own hands and start climbing the 150-foot crater wall. A bold move, but maybe not the best idea when you're surrounded by toxic fog and slippery volcanic rock. The helicopter was a fixed point, easier for a rescue chopper to locate than two guys scattered on a foggy, crumbling wall. A few hours later, a Hawaii Fire Department helicopter spotted Craig the pilot and airlifted him to safety. The rescue helicopter could hover closer to the floor to pick up Craig without navigating the tight, unstable slopes where Chris and Michael were. The floor's open space gave rescuers a better shot at spotting him, even with the steam. The ongoing fog and potential rain made helicopter rescue risky. The weather didn't just pause things, it turned an already insane situation into a logistical nightmare. Saturday night, the combination of dense fog, steam, toxic gases, and darkness likely made operations impossible. Visibility was near zero. The unstable crater wall prevented ground rescues. Helicopters couldn't safely navigate at night, pausing efforts until Sunday. By nightfall, Mike and Chris were separated on the wall. Chris was desperate to get out. The crater floor was a death trap with no food, water, or clean air, and the toxic gases were making him and Michael sick. He took a gamble, said a prayer, and started climbing, even though the wall was like trying to scale a pile of gravel. He shouted encouragement to Michael, but lost track of him in the steam. He scaled the unstable rocky slope, and by 2:30 p.m. on Sunday, he reached the rim. It was 27 hours after the crash. During the climb, he was somewhere on the vertical or near vertical wall, gripping loose volcanic rock while choking on fumes. So he channeled his inner Spidey man and managed to crawl out of the crater. Basically, Chris rescued himself. Michael ended up on a 3-foot wide ledge. He was isolated and exposed, and it was barely big enough for him to sit on. The toxic gases are deadly. Sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide can cause lung damage within minutes. He was breathing toxic fumes for 2 days, which gave him chemical pneumonia. It's a miracle he didn't pass out. It was 60 feet below the rim. It was a nightmare to access. The steam hid him from rescuers, and the glowing lava below was a constant reminder of how screwed he was. The ledge offered no protection from the elements, and he had no food or proper water. Michael used tricks like reciting the alphabet backwards to stay calm. It was too high for ground teams to reach easily, and too low for helicopters to spot through the steam. One rescue attempt failed when a net was caught on a rock. Michael's final rescue was a blind net drop, and it wasn't until Monday's brief weather break that pilot Tom Hotman could lower a rope blindly and pull Michael up. It was skill and pure luck. Michael was rushed to a hospital in Hilo, where he was treated for lung inflammation, dehydration, and exposure. Chris and Craig were also treated for lung and eye irritation, but they were released quickly. All 3 walked away from a crash that should have been fatal. The National Transportation Board later pinned the crash on Craig, the pilot, for flying too close to a volcanic gas cloud, which starved the engine of oxygen. The cost of the rescue? A cool $46,000, including equipment ruined by those pesky volcanic fumes. The footage they risked their lives for didn't even make it into Sliver's final cut. Talk about a plot twist. I wonder if it was worth it. So what happened to our trio after their volcanic adventure? Craig Hoskins, the stunt pilot from Salt Lake City, continued his career as a Hollywood pilot, working on over 150 films like Die Hard and Speed. Craig Hoskins worked in conjunction with the FAA in developing the current Aerobatic Competency Evaluator program and was one of the first 10 ACE evaluators. He also helped develop the FAA Motion Picture Operations Manual, allowing greater flexibility in complying with the FAA regulations, while performing unusual flying for movies and stunts. Craig is a member of the Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild, Stunts Unlimited, and is the only pilot ever to be invited into the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences. Additionally, he has performed 3 international airplane crashes. He has worked as a movie pilot in more than 55 countries, holding 10 foreign licenses. Craig has over 22,000 hours in more than 260 types of airplanes, helicopters, jets, and warbirds. He's 67 years old as of 2025. Michael Benson, the cinematographer from Woodland Hills, California, kept working in Hollywood. He's credited on films like The Saint, Volcano, ironic, right? And No Way Out, as a cameraman, operator, and second unit director of photography. And he was described as well regarded in the industry. As of 2025, he'd be in his mid-70s. As for Chris Duddy, the 31-year-old camera technician from Los Angeles, he bounced back and stayed in the film game. He worked on big projects like True Lies, Mystery Men, and 13 Days as a visual effects technician. He's married to Dawn Heston, the daughter of Charles Heston. He'd be around 64 years old now, possibly still in LA or retired from the industry. Christopher continued working with James Cameron on his next 3 features, True Lies, Terminator 2 3D, and the second most successful movie of all time, Titanic, in which Mr. Cameron enlisted Christopher to shoot the climax of the ship sinking. Again, he was on the Academy Award-winning visual effects team. At the same time, Christopher was there at the beginning of James Cameron's and Stan Winston's newly formed visual effects studio, Digital Domain, where they appointed Christopher to be the main director of visual effects photography on the summer blockbuster action-packed hit Dante's Peak. He went on to shoot Kevin Costner's feature film, 13 Days, and he worked on many more projects. These guys didn't chase fame from the accident. Chris even said he wanted to be known for his work, not the crash, even though the crash garnered attention. They dove back into Hollywood after surviving a volcano. Never underestimate the power of human grit or the dangers of flying too close to an angry volcano. Steer clear of Madame Pele's bad side. Not all volcano helicopter crashes have miracle outcomes. On June 15, 2003, a Hughes 500 helicopter operated by Tropical Helicopters on a sightseeing tour over Kilauea's active lava flows crashed into a rugged terrain at Palama Pali, a 600-foot cliff about 200 miles from Chain of Craters Road. The pilot reported engine problems before the helicopter pancaked into an old lava flow. The crash was fatal, killing the pilot and all 3 passengers. Federal transportation safety investigators worked at the site, racing against advancing lava, with a geologist accessing the risk of lava, researching the wreckage. The crash highlights the risks of low-altitude flights over active volcanic terrain. The threat of encroaching lava added urgency to the investigation, making it a unique challenge for recovery teams. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Aloha.